Hi and welcome to this podcast, and I'm really delighted today to be welcoming Sirin Darcan to our podcast. Sirin works for Nielsen's, and I don't know how I describe it really. I'm going to ask herself to describe what she does. I see her as an implementer of software and solutions, and maybe I've got that a bit wrong, so I'll ask her in a second to explain what she does. I was going to say as an introduction, it was interesting. I was on a long train journey yesterday, and I was reading somebody's post on LinkedIn, like you do, and somebody suggested that you spontaneously write down 3 things that you admire in people that you either work with, or you meet in business, or work for you. And I decided to do this little exercise, and I quickly wrote down
Hello?
my 3 things.
Oh.
And the 3 things I wrote down were ideas, getting things done, and being open to change. And when I thought about today's podcast, I thought, well, probably they apply to sharing in all respects, that having ideas on how to do things, getting things done, and being open to change are really important things. So with that, I'm going to welcome and introduce you to Sirin, and I'm going to ask her, I think, first just to explain what she does, because I'm the world's worst person at looking at email signatures and seeing what her job title is even. So over to you, Sirin. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about what you do in your role for Nielsen?
Of course. Thank you very much, Phil. And also thank you for inviting this podcast to me. As you mentioned, I'm working in Nielsen for 15 years, and I am in global consumer insights in operations sites, and I am responsible for setup and delivery initiatives for operations excellence team. Right now, I know our signature is really long and sometimes it's difficult to understand, but currently what I am doing, I am leading the most important digitization project for consumer insight business, mainly in operations sites. Some of the projects I work with the client service team, but mostly 70-80% of my projects are with operations team, operations end-to-end leaders. Before my current role, I also worked as an operation team leader for data entry, coding, data processing, and analysis teams. And that's why I am the subject matter expert for these areas globally. That's why I'm mainly working that type of projects for data processing, data analyzing, or coding teams. I am working with the different regions. As I mentioned, I am in global role. I am mainly working with Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia, Latin and Eastern Europe countries. I evaluate the end-to-end systems, new methodologies, processes, and tools for these areas. Currently, I live in London. I am married and I have 1 daughter. Also, I love to visit different countries and learn about different cultures.
Okay, well, I'm glad I didn't try and do that introduction myself, because I would never have got that such wide remit, I don't think, into such a short space as you managed to do there. So thank you for that. I'm going to start with a difficult question first, just to put you on your toes. I think that's what I'm going to do. I was going to just ask you, perhaps, what are the 2 or 3 biggest challenges that you face, perhaps, when you're implementing new software or performing your role? Is there anything that sort of comes to mind that you find as a challenge that you have to face regularly?
Yeah, sure. That's a really good question for me. Actually, switching over computer software can be an exciting transition that increases productivity, of course, but the process can be difficult and filled with surprises and unexpected scenarios. That's why we always need to be aware of it and ready to take immediate action all the time during this process. According to me, the biggest challenge is in the beginning. Most important thing, I believe, it affects all project cycle. It's the finding the most efficient software, right software with the right software company, vendor, provider, whatever you are calling it, for your different requirements. I believe we need to list out the different alternatives between different softwares and test them out, and to see which one is the more effective for our business. For doing this, the most important thing is collaboration with your team. You need to work with the right users, and we need to know our key requirements, and we need to prioritize them and evaluate the alternatives based on that. When we find the best software for our company, the next steps will be more manageable. This is the first thing to me. The second one, when we are implementing a new tool, software, or system, the business cannot stop operating. You know, we want the
Sure.
people to adopt the new system while still using the old one and delivering the results to our clients. This can be a frustrating situation while still having to keep up with the high demands of the business. I generally define this to change the wheel during your road trip. That's why it's really, really difficult and it's really challenging.
And of course, everyone's always too busy to change at any one moment, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. This is the second one. And third one, I believe it's training. Training should be the number one priority of companies switching over systems. However, provide good training can be difficult. Sometimes we can't provide the right training for the right people, or people are not able to spend their time on long training sessions. As I mentioned in my previous challenge, they are full with the demands from the client. So therefore, on-demand support via instant messenger or email or a series of brief, short, informative videos will be an ideal. We need to manage this, and we need to ask the people what they prefer. You need to make an open conversation with your team members. This is really important to me.
Sure. And I wonder as well, I mean, given the fact that you cover so many different regions around the world, different cultures, as particularly coming into mind here, does that present a problem? And I'm also thinking as well that I guess, I don't know this for a fact, but I know from some experience working with you that you work with different sized teams, where working with a team where it's a team of two is very different to implementing software with a team of maybe 50. Do these sorts of things present problems as well? There's sort of different cultures and different ways people are working and different size of teams?
Yeah, of course, it can be challenging. It is really exciting. I love to do this job. It's really good and improve myself as well, because working with different regions, you are able to see the different work styles, different cultures. It is really exciting. Each and every region or country has its own internal dynamics. Even if we have standards, they do the daily jobs in different ways. So first of all, I need to understand what are they doing, what they need. Sometimes it's difficult to make all of them happy with this change. So you should show them that you understand them and you are there to help improve their services. This is really important. The most important thing with that type of biggest projects is the communication. You need to create good communication with your team members and you need to collaborate with them. Also, the another thing, I work with LATAM, Africa, Middle East. The time difference can be a challenge some of the times, especially during the training process. Sometimes it's really difficult to manage it. That's why we need to be flexible. We need to arrange ourselves according to team's requirements. And that's the another challenge. And to me, one more thing to work with the different regions or countries, some of the times they use different jargon, different terminology. Even if you are in the same company, they use something in different.
Yes, I've encountered that.
It affects your communication. I can give you an example about that. Once I was talking with a person who was facing a problem. And he was telling me, I'm facing a problem with table. I cannot run this table like that, something. He's explained, but I couldn't understand him. And then I asked for a sample. And when I got the sample, I realized that it's not a table, it's just raw data. It's the CSV data. So, but they are calling it as tables. It was many years ago. In these days, we didn't have screen sharing or any that type of technology we are able to use today.
Indeed. No, that makes a difference.
Today we have great technology that we can make a conversation with cameras, we can see each other, we can share our screens, and it makes our lives better. And we need to use the technology.
And I guess I've found this from travelling the world as I have, that you get different sort of structures within companies as well, which are not sort of necessarily deliberate, but in some countries everyone sort of does what the boss says, and in other countries there's a lot more sort of, there's not so much hierarchy, and teams like to work together to
Yeah,
get things done. And I guess that presents its own problems as well, or challenges, not necessarily problems, but just ways that you have to be flexible about how you work with different teams in
exactly,
different countries. Yeah, and I've
exactly.
witnessed that, not so much in the way that you have, but I know when I've been selling software, sometimes I think I've sold software, and I actually find that it's the boss you've really got to sell to, because they just do what he says. And other countries, it's the team workers that you've got to convince and get on board. So you get those differences. And I think there's also some, I don't know what you've found, but I think there's some cultures where they're very good at, if I can use the term, muddling through, that they'll get there just by endeavour, and others, I don't say they want it on a plate and want things easy, but they expect to be trained before they'll try and perhaps take on a task.
Yeah,
I think there's just
yeah,
different ways, different cultures, different ways people work, which I think is interesting.
yeah. It is. When I started this role, I didn't aware of such a variance of working styles.
Yeah,
So then when I met with the Latam team, they are doing things in different. When I met with the Africa team, they are doing things in a different way.
yeah.
So it is really good to know how they doing their job, and also it's an opportunity to myself to see there is another ways to do something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, one of the things, as a question that an old friend of mine who has sadly passed away put to me, a really good question that I put to a lot of people, and I've used in job interviews now, actually. And the question he said to me was, "What are you like, Phil? Are you a starter, a finisher, or are you good at the bit in the middle?" And it was a real challenge to me, and I,
Yeah,
because you like to think you're good at all these things, and perhaps at a certain age I did think that, and I've learned to realise that actually I think I'm a good starter and a good finisher. I'm not very good at the bit in the middle, to be honest. I guess with what you're doing there, you have to be pretty good at getting things off the ground and starting, and making things happen in that middle bit when it's, I
yeah,
wouldn't say a slog, but there's a lot of work actually making sure everything does happen to a good standard, and actually finishing by making sure that the teams are self-sufficient and are up and running when they take on a new system or product.
yes,
So
exactly.
a lot of skill in there, and you obviously need the representatives in each country to make sure that happens, and find the right people who are probably the champions of the products, I guess, as well,
Yeah.
to make things happen.
Hmm.
Do you find it works better in some offices where there is a real champion of the product who makes it their business to learn the tricks and the ways of doing things efficiently, so that they can pass on that knowledge? Do you think, does that tend to help things along when you've got someone like that?
Yeah, of course. As I mentioned, I'm in consumer insight business. In this area, our Asia Pacific team are really big, and they have huge experience in consumer insight business. That's why when I started this role, I learned from them so much. They are really good single point of contacts to me. If I face some questions or problems, I can say, I reach out to them and they help me all the time. Also, culturally, they are really helpful. Anytime I need them, they are there, I know. So yeah, during these last 3 years, I learned from them so much. They are really good and they are helpful. Yeah, and also they are the biggest one for consumer insight. Generally, global data science people, application development people
Yeah,
are in this region.
yeah,
That's why they are doing lots in this area, and I work with them more frequently than the other regions.
sure, sure. I mean, I was going to turn the conversation on to and because I know I'm one of these, so I hope you say the right things here. But that obviously the software companies that you work with, I suspect they're different as well. Then I'm sure they're not all the same. And whilst good software companies want to be good suppliers to companies such as yourselves, I suspect it's just as important that you're good clients, so that there's a harmonious relationship and there's good communication between you. Do you find there's differences between different software companies that you work with in the way that they do some things well and not some things not so well? Is there anything that that
Yeah,
anyone can learn
yeah.
from that in how companies work and what they provide in terms of information, tools,
Hmm.
etc.?
Hmm. Yeah, sure. All companies are different. In last 3 years, I worked with data coding project, data processing project, and reporting projects. All of them, I work with different agencies, and of course, there are differences between them. The most important thing to me to put a good relationship between your provider and be open, and it's the most important thing for any kind of relationship,
Sure.
which I believe needs to be built on trust, respect, and open communication.
Yep.
So that's why if you put this to your ground, you are gonna have a good relationship with your vendor, provider, or software company, whatever you are calling it.
Yeah.
And the another most important thing is regular communication, because during the process, it's most of the time it's a long process. That's why you need to walk through with your vendor. They provide you training, support, anything that you need. That's why you need to make regular communication with them. And another thing, you need to do immediate reply and find a solution if there is any question or issues your vendor is facing. That is really important.
Yeah.
You need to know you are there when they face a problem.
Sure.
It's a mutual interaction, you know.
I think you're
If
right.
you
Yeah.
do that, you know they will do the same thing for you. So mutual respect and trust provide you the good communication. Yeah, some of the time, some of the vendors are providing trainings in different ways, some of them in another way. You just need to know which one is more accurate for your team, what your team prefers.
I think you're right with what you're saying. I think, building that relationship between the software vendor and the company using it is really important. And as a software vendor, I can say one of the things, if anything, that frustrates me most, we like to think we keep good communication with our clients and are quite proactive. And if there's a problem, say it. Or if we think the software's not being used right, say it. And open up a dialogue and to try and make things better all the time. And if I do have a frustration, we do have some clients, not Nielsen, I hasten to add, where we contact them and sort of say, is everything going okay? We think you can perhaps make more use of a software, and they just go, no, it's fine. And I feel in the dark then. I like that communication, and I respect, of course, that if they're happy with what they're doing, they don't want any input because what they're doing is fine. But I just feel much more comfortable when I know if there are problems or what things would help and so on. And I think what you say there about communication is a really, really good point. The more you communicate with your software
Yeah.
vendors, I think the more that both the companies, the software vendor, will get more out of it, and yourselves, you'll get more out of it, because I'm never one who's complacent, who thinks that everything is the best it could always be, because there's always room for improvement, and it's just a question of whether that improvement makes a difference or not, and usually it does. So I think that dialogue is really important, and I can see that's a part of your role that you find important too, I think.
Yeah, it's a long journey, and
Yeah.
you want to generally I prefer to walk through with the company which I can trust.
Sure.
So yeah, the communication is the key.
Is it different? I mean, I know you use a fairly heavy duty complex product from us. I guess that's quite a different in terms of training and implementation. If it's a product that's actually conceptually quite easy to use, it's easy for the users, perhaps going to a wider user base, but where where perhaps people are going to be more casual users and not going to use it day in, day out. I suppose getting that information out is different from a technical product like MRDCL, where you need the top people to understand what they're doing because they want to make 100% use of it. I suppose that when it's a simpler piece of software, that's perhaps got wider use. That's a different challenge altogether, is it? Getting out enough knowledge to perhaps irregular users, or isn't that perhaps the case?
Yeah, generally for my projects, also MRDCL and Rizol, I work with most of the Nielsen onshore countries,
Yeah.
and also our main vendor. For MRDCL, we have 90 users
Right.
in our main vendor. So I need to manage the onshore teams, the data processing teams, and also our vendor. There are 4 different groups in this communication: onshore teams, offshore teams, you, and myself. So to create a good communication between all of these, yeah, it's a challenging, and also there is time differences. That's why you and I created 4 different training
Yeah.
time for different time zones,
Yeah.
which is really appreciated, because these trainings are really difficult to understand, and the user needs to have data processing background to understand more technical aspects.
Sure. Yeah.
So we need to train them accordingly, and they have to finish some onboarding trainings before, and then we set up 6 different live meetings for 4 different time zones. It was really good exercise. It was really good, and we got really good benefit from here.
Right.
For the other tools, such as really easy to learn, like do-it-yourself tools, yeah, it is different. We provide the people onboarding trainings, and we just set up a Q&A sessions, because it is really easy to learn, and they need to play around with the software at their end. So we give them some time to play around with the tool, and then we set up a Q&A session. And also I create a development item list. If there is something we need to develop, the people can enter this, and I share it with you, and we can continue the improvement of the product. Yeah, these two are different. These two have different challenges.
Actually, you touched on a point there. I was going to ask you that question. I guess there's a lot of behind the scenes things that as a software supplier we don't see, such as that you build your own resources, both not in terms of and in terms of people as well, who've got experts in different areas, but
Yeah.
also in terms of files and electronic files and examples that you have internally to help people around the world do
Yeah.
whatever it is they're trying to do. So I guess
Yeah,
that's quite an
we
important
are
thing for you.
yeah, we are trying to do that. If there is an internal experience on any kind of tool, for example, for MRDCL transition, we have internal experience from our Asia Pacific team. They have been using MRDCL for a long time,
Yes.
in Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, China teams. We have really experienced users. That's why we create a Nielsen support team. And if the new users have faced some issues, or they can't find the way how they need to do the setup, they reach out this support group first.
Sure.
And generally they can answer their questions. If they can't, then we are going to reach out to you.
Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. But that's right. And then it also avoids that sort of reinventing of the wheel, where if somebody's already found a solution in Malaysia already, there's no point, someone reinventing that in Africa or whatever it might be. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. I mean, it's a difficult question. I don't want you to put your foot in it with anybody, of course. But do you find you get occasional resistance to change because everyone is too busy, of course? Changing software is something that means you've got to change the way you work, and it's easy to see the negatives of that change without perhaps seeing the benefits, because any major change, particularly in what people have used as tools day in, day out, it makes their life more difficult. Let's be honest about it. Do you find you get pockets of resistance, or is it something that people are getting better at? My experience is over the llast 20 years, people have been more open to change than they were perhaps in the 1990s or around 2000. What's your experience in that, more nowadays perhaps than in the past?
Yeah, it is changing. You are right. When the technology improving. The people are also changing. They are more open to change, as you mentioned. When I compare to 10 years ago,
yeah, I think that's true.
everything is really different, and people more open to change. But still, of course, there are some resistance for some area, as you mentioned, for high-level products like MRDCL. Data processing people can understand me very well. We were using quantum for a long time. I am in research sector in 20 years, and I have been using quantum for 20 years.
Yeah, sure.
So there are lots of people like me, and when we want to change it, yeah, of course there is a resistance, because they know this product very, very well,
of course,
and they don't want to change it.
No, there's an element of rediscovering what you've known for the last 15 years, which
yeah, exactly. Yeah, when I started this project, there are resistance, especially for the high volume countries. They have lots of projects, and it's really difficult them to move from one tool to another and do the delivery in a
they've still got to get their work done. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. That's why in here the most important thing is collaboration. You need to show them what's the advantages, and you need to be open. You need to show them the disadvantages if there is. And you need to compare these two products, what quantum give us and what MRDCL give us. In now we need to be more digital. We need to connect different tools, different processes. That's why we are calling it end-to-end. Previously, data processing teams were working more closely. But for now, it's an end-to-end process. We need to connect with the data collection team, and then we need to connect with the reporting team. And we need to automate some of the steps between these processes.
Well, you're saying the same things as I think there entirely. I have to say, I mean, I'm about to write a blog article actually on how market research has changed from sort of being very separate tasks in terms of data collection, doing analysis, and then reporting it. Whereas I see it as all becoming one now, and certainly analysis and reporting is becoming one, I think now, or should be one now. And data collection needs to really go into that to a great extent. So the whole thing has become data processing has widened in a sense, because data processing used to just be the number crunching in the middle, and I don't think it is anymore. I think it's now about the whole thing in terms of giving clients access to the data so they can use a dashboard or whatever it might be on the end of it, and that whole thing is one now, rather than, or should be one now, or moving towards being one now. And yes, it's a subject I'm about to write a blog article on, rather interestingly. I totally agree with that, and I think people are in tune with that more now. And I think as sort of younger workforces are coming in, they're accepting that as being the way that things are, because that's what they've learned at university and have grown up with and seeing all walks of life. We all go on the internet now, and it just accept their smooth processes from start to finish in many ways. And I think that's coming into the workspace now, and I think it was a difficulty 20 years ago, 15 years ago, and even 10 years ago.
Yes, of course.
So I think it's good. I think it's good news. I do. I like change if it's positive.
Too. So me too. And I want to say one more thing about to manage the resistance to change. Your communication with your software company, with your vendor, it is really important.
Sure.
If you get good support from your vendor, you can manage this resistance easier.
I wish all software, I mean, one thing that we try to do, and I hope we succeed in it, is that we try to be open about what problems you will hit and what won't be perhaps as good, or what difficulties there'll be in, say, switching from quantum to MRDCL, to use what we were talking about just now, because it won't be easy necessarily, but I think it's best to put those problems at the front rather than just hiding from them and not doing the sort of classic thing that companies can do, I think, where they just want to sell to you and then not worry about the problems until later. And I hope we
Yeah.
achieve that in that.
Yeah, I am happy
Yeah, you know,
that you are not like that.
no, I mean, I wish I can see some software companies out there don't do that, and I'm not going to name any, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to put out there what things are going to be difficult, what things, the challenges you've got to meet to get the best out of the software, because I think software vendors should be seeing their role as helping people get the best out of the software.
Exactly.
Because that's the way long-term relationships build, in my opinion.
Of
Anyway.
course. Of course.
So yeah, I think we're doing a lot of us agreeing here. I think we're not disagreeing too much on things. I think we've sort of come to an end here, in the sense that we've covered an awful lot of ground in the last half an hour or so. I'm going to end with two completely non-market research questions, just to catch you off your guard. So I'm going to ask you two things that are nothing to do with work at all. So I'm going to ask you, first of all, what's your favourite food? If you had to choose one food from around the world, which would you choose? And you can't choose your own country as well, so I'm not going to let you choose that. I've caught you out here.
Just one? I'm between two.
You can choose two, then I'll let you choose two.
Okay, ice cream and watermelon.
Well, there's an answer. Okay.
As you can see, I'm a summer person.
I see. And you come from a hot country. Okay, yeah. I get it.
What's yours?
Oh, now I'm put on the spot. I don't know, really. I like too many things. I'm just greedy, I think. I like everything nearly that's going. I don't know. I need to think about that. I shouldn't have put you on the spot.
Okay, let me know later.
I will let you know. I'll let you know by email later. And you did also say that you love travelling. You love visiting different cultures. What's your favourite country in the world then? Where do you like visiting most?
Actually, all is fine to me. I want to see the different places. I need to see new people faces.
Yeah.
But where did I like more? I can say Italy.
Italy, you like, do you?
Yeah,
Italy,
Portofino, Cinque Terre, that area.
Okay.
Seaside area again.
I know which country I haven't been to that I want to go. I've been to about 60 countries, I think, now, and I know there's one I haven't been to that I really want to go to, and that's Brazil. And I missed out on a trip last year, and no rational reason for it, but I just want to go there. Well, there's a rational reason, but I just want an excuse to go there. So if you can send me there sometime, that would be great. Sirin, thank you very much for joining me on this podcast today. It's not only been fun actually as well, but it's been really informative, and I hope it'll give some real good insights to people who listen in, because I think you've given away a lot about what's important and what can make things happen, and I really value it. So we're going to close there, but thank you very much for joining me.
Likewise, Phil. Thank you very much for inviting me to this podcast. I hope it will be helpful.
I think it will. No, there's been
the people. Thank you very much.
Really interesting stuff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.